My wife begged me not to go to my brother's wedding. She said it wasn't safe. I thought she was being paranoid. Turns out my own brother had been planning to murder me at his reception dinner. And the reason why will shock you. You know that feeling when you're getting ready for something important and there's this knot in your stomach you can't quite explain. That was me this morning, standing in front of my bedroom mirror, fumbling with my tie for the third time. The sunlight was streaming through our window, casting everything in this golden glow that should have felt peaceful. But it didn't. My hands were shaking just enough to make the simple task of getting dressed feel impossible. "Honey, are you ready?" Anna's voice drifted in from the hallway, soft and familiar. She appeared in the doorway already dressed in that navy blue dress I'd complimented her on a dozen times. But today, even she looked tense. "Yeah, almost," I called back, though we both knew I was lying. I'd been almost ready for 20 minutes. Today was my brother Mark's wedding. Mark, the guy who taught me how to ride a bike, who covered for me when I broke Mom's favorite vase, who stood by me through every stupid mistake of my teenage years. I should have been excited, right? Happy for him. But as I finally got that tie straight and looked at myself in the mirror, all I could think was something's wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the way Mark had been acting lately, distant and almost calculating. Or maybe it was how Anna had gone quiet every time his name came up in conversation over the past few weeks. "You look handsome," Anna said, stepping into the room. But her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I turned to face her, this woman who'd been my anchor for the past 5 years. She knew me better than anyone could read my mood from across a room. And right now she was studying my face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Anna," I started, then stopped. "How do you tell your wife that you're dreading your own brother's wedding? How do you explain that the person you've loved your entire life suddenly feels like a stranger?" "I know," she said, quietly reaching up to smooth down my collar. "I feel it too." That's when I knew. Whatever was coming today, whatever was making my skin crawl and my heart race, Anna sensed it too. And somehow, that made everything so much worse. I grabbed my keys from the dresser, my wallet, my phone, all the normal things you do when you're heading out the door. But nothing about today felt normal. "We should go," I said, though every instinct in my body was screaming at me to stay home, to call in sick, to make up any excuse not to walk into whatever was waiting for us. Anna nodded, but she didn't move. We stood there for a moment, both of us knowing that once we walked out that door, once we drove to that church, something was going to change. Something big. I just had no idea how big. As we drove through the familiar streets of our hometown, my mind kept drifting back to when things were simpler. When Mark and I were just two kids who shared a bunk bed and fought over the last piece of pizza. I remember when we were 8 and 10, Mark convinced me to help him borrow Mrs. Henderson's garden gnome. His plan was to move it 1 yard over every night until it ended up in the Johnsons' garden 3 blocks away. "It'll be like a mystery," he said, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Everyone will be talking about the traveling gnome." Of course, I was the one who got caught red-handed on night 2, clutching that stupid ceramic gnome while Mark had somehow vanished into thin air. Mom grounded me for a week. "Mark!" He brought me comic books and shared his Halloween candy, whispering through the bedroom door about how I was the best brother ever for not ratting him out. That was Mark. Charming, spontaneous, able to talk his way out of anything. And me, I was the responsible one. The planner, the kid who actually read the instructions before building the Lego set. By high school, those differences became more pronounced. Mark was the guy everyone wanted to hang out with, the one who could make the class laugh, who dated the prettiest girls, and somehow still maintained decent grades without ever seeming to study. Me, I was the one with the perfect attendance record, the guy who helped other kids with their homework, who worked weekends at the hardware store to save for college. But here's the thing, people didn't see Mark resented me for it. Not openly, never directly, but I could feel it simmering underneath all those jokes and backslaps. When Dad would praise me for making honor roll, Mark's smile would tighten just a little. When I got accepted to state with a partial scholarship, Mark congratulated me with a hug that felt more like a stranglehold. The worst fight we ever had was senior year. I'd been accepted to 3 colleges, all with decent financial aid packages. Mark had been waitlisted at his first choice and was looking at community college. Dad, in his typically tactless way, made some comment at dinner about following your brother's example. Mark exploded, called me a brown-nosing goody two-shoes who made everyone else look bad just by existing. Said I was the reason he could never live up to Dad's expectations. The words that really stuck, though, were these, "You think you're so perfect, David. But someday I'm going to prove you're not." I was 18. I thought he was just being dramatic the way teenagers are when they're hurt and lashing out. I never imagined he'd hold on to that anger for 15 years. That night, after Mark stormed out and didn't come home until dawn, I called Anna. We'd been dating for about 6 months then, and she was the only person I felt comfortable talking to about family stuff. "I don't understand why he hates me," I told her, sitting on my childhood bed staring at the posters on the wall that suddenly felt too young, too optimistic. "He doesn't hate you," Anna said softly. I could picture her curled up in her dorm room, probably with a cup of tea and one of those romance novels she thought I didn't know she read. "He's scared of you." "Scared of me?" "You represent everything he thinks he's supposed to be but isn't. That's terrifying for someone like Mark. He's probably been comparing himself to you his whole life, and he's tired of losing." Even then, Anna understood people in ways that amazed me. She could see the hurt underneath Mark's anger, the insecurity driving his resentment. She was the one who convinced me to keep reaching out, to keep trying, even when Mark made it clear he didn't want my help. "Give him time," she'd say, whenever I'd get frustrated with Mark's hot and cold treatment of me. "He'll come around." But as I sat in that car driving to his wedding, I realized Anna had been wrong about one thing. Mark hadn't come around. If anything, the distance between us had grown wider over the years. Phone calls became text messages became holiday cards, and even those felt obligatory. The irony wasn't lost on me that Anna, who'd always been Mark's biggest defender, was now the one sitting beside me with that worried look in her eyes. "You're thinking about him again," she said, glancing over at me from the passenger seat. "Am I that obvious?" "You get this line right here." She touched the space between my eyebrows. "When you're trying to figure out what you did wrong, you've had that line since we started talking about this wedding." That's when it hit me. I'd been carrying this guilt for months, wondering if I'd somehow failed as a brother, if there was something I should have done differently. But sitting there, feeling Anna's hand on my arm, seeing the genuine concern in her eyes, I realized something important. I wasn't the one who'd built this wall between Mark and me. I'd been knocking on it for years, trying to tear it down while he'd been quietly adding more bricks. The question now was, what was he planning to do with all that built-up resentment? The Grand Vista Hotel was everything you'd expect from a Mark production. Marble floors that clicked under every footstep, crystal chandeliers that caught the afternoon light, and enough flowers to make a florist weep with joy. This was Mark's style, always had been. Go big or go home. I adjusted my bow tie one last time as we walked through the lobby. The tuxedo rental had been perfect, but somehow it still felt like I was playing dress-up. Anna looked stunning beside me, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept glancing around like she was looking for exits. "The ceremony doesn't start for another hour," I told her as we made our way toward the ballroom. "We've got time to relax." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. The ballroom was a flurry of activity. Wedding planners darting between tables, with clipboards, caterers arranging silverware with military precision, and family members milling around looking important and slightly overwhelmed. It was controlled chaos, the kind that makes a wedding feel magical if you're not the one responsible for making it happen. Anna immediately found something to do with her hands straightening napkins that were already perfectly straight, adjusting centerpieces that didn't need adjusting. It's what she did when she was nervous, this need to fix things to make everything perfect. "These flowers are beautiful," she said, but her voice sounded strained. Mark really went all out. That's when I saw Ella across the room. Anna's best friend since college, the kind of person who could make anyone laugh within 5 minutes of meeting them. But today, Ella looked anything but cheerful. She was standing near the gift table, arms crossed, watching the wedding planners with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. When our eyes met, she walked over quickly, too quickly. "Hey, David," she said, giving me a hug that felt more like she was holding on for dear life. "You look great. Very groom adjacent." It was the kind of joke Ella would normally deliver with a grin, but today it fell flat. She kept glancing at Anna, these quick, meaningful looks that made my stomach tighten. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Of course," Ella said, but she was fidgeting with her purse strap. "Just, you know how weddings are, stressful." Anna appeared at my elbow carrying a water glass she'd gotten from somewhere. Her hands were shaking just enough to make the water ripple. "Ella," Anna said, and something passed between them. One of those wordless conversations. Women have perfected all raised eyebrows and slight nods. Whatever they were communicating, it wasn't good news. "I need some air," Anna announced suddenly. "This place is so stuffy." It wasn't stuffy. The hotel's air conditioning was working perfectly, and there were probably 60 people in a room designed for 300. But I followed her out to the hallway anyway because that's what you do when your wife needs air that isn't actually needed. The hallway was quieter, lined with those generic hotel paintings that are supposed to be soothing, but just make you feel like you're in a doctor's office. Anna leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. "Anna, what's going on?" She opened her eyes and looked at me. Really looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. "I don't think I should be here," she said quietly. "What do you mean?" "I mean here at this wedding. I don't think it's safe." The word safe hit me like a slap. Safe from what we were at a hotel wedding surrounded by family and friends, eating overpriced chicken and dancing to a DJ who probably moonlighted at high school proms. "Anna, you're scaring me." "Safe from what?" She glanced back toward the ballroom where I could hear the faint sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. "I can't explain it," she said. "I just have this feeling that something terrible is going to happen if I stay." This was not like Anna. She was practical, logical, the kind of person who made pros and cons lists before buying a new coffee maker. She didn't have mysterious feelings about things. She dealt in facts and evidence and rational thought. "Honey, it's just pre-wedding jitters. You've been worried about this for weeks. But nothing's going to happen. It's Mark's wedding. He's my brother." "That's exactly what I'm afraid of," she whispered. Before I could ask what that meant, Ella appeared in the hallway. She looked around to make sure we were alone, then stepped closer. "Anna told you," she asked. "Told me what?" Ella and Anna exchanged another one of those looks, and I felt like I was watching a conversation in a foreign language. "David," Anna said, taking my hands. "I know this sounds crazy, but I need you to trust me. Something isn't right about today, about Mark, about this whole wedding." "Wowie, what are you talking about?" "I've been noticing things, little things. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. The phone calls he takes in another room when you visit. The questions he asks about your schedule, your routines." My first instinct was to defend Mark, to explain away whatever Anna thought she'd seen. But then, I remembered that line between my eyebrows she'd mentioned in the car. The one that appeared when I was trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Maybe the question wasn't what I'd done wrong. Maybe the question was what Mark was planning to do. "It'll be fine," I said. But even I could hear the uncertainty in my voice. "I'll be there with you." Anna squeezed my hands tighter. "That's what I'm afraid of," she said again. Ella cleared her throat. "Maybe we should just go," she suggested. "Make up an excuse, food poisoning or something." For a moment, I actually considered it. We could walk back to the car drive home, spend the evening watching Netflix and pretending this conversation had never happened. It would be so easy. But Mark was my brother. Whatever issues we had, whatever resentment had built up over the years, he was still family. I couldn't just not show up to his wedding because my wife had a bad feeling. "We're staying," I said firmly. "But Anna, if you really don't want to be here, you and Ella can leave. I'll make excuses." "No," Anna said immediately. "If you're staying, I'm staying. We stick together." That should have been reassuring. The idea that my wife wouldn't abandon me even when every instinct she had was telling her to run. But as we walked back into that ballroom, back into the controlled chaos of Mark's perfect wedding, all I could think about was her voice when she'd said it, like she was agreeing to walk into battle. By the time the ceremony was ready to begin, the hotel's chapel had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. White roses everywhere, candles flickering in tall glass holders, and enough tulle draped from the ceiling to outfit a small ballet company. The late afternoon sun was streaming through the stained glass windows, casting these gorgeous colored patterns across the floor. It was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. Like Mark had hired someone to create the exact wedding that would look best in photographs, not necessarily the one that meant the most to him. I took my place in the third-row family section, straightening my jacket one more time. Anna slid in beside me, and I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat. She'd managed to put on her game face, the polite smile she wore to work functions and family dinners when she'd rather be anywhere else. But her hands were clenched in her lap knuckles, white against the navy fabric of her dress. "You okay?" I whispered. She nodded, but didn't look at me. Her eyes were scanning the room, taking in faces exits the positioning of the wedding party, like she was memorizing a battlefield. The processional music started that traditional wedding march that makes everyone automatically stand up and crane their necks toward the back of the room. Mark's groomsmen filed in first, a lineup of guys I mostly recognized from high school and college. They all had that slightly uncomfortable look men get when they're wearing formal wear they don't own and trying not to trip over their own feet. Then came Mark. I have to admit, he looked good. The tux fit him perfectly. His hair was styled just right, and he had that confident smile that had been charming people since we were kids. But when his eyes swept across the congregation and landed on me, something flickered across his face. Just for a second. Something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't happiness to see me there. It wasn't even the nervous excitement you'd expect from a groom. It was something else entirely. Something calculating. The best man caught my attention next. Jake Morrison, Mark's college roommate and longtime friend. I'd met Jake dozens of times over the years, and he'd always been friendly enough. But today, he looked like he'd rather be getting a root canal. His jaw was clenched, his shoulders rigid, and when he glanced in my direction, there was something almost apologetic in his expression. Why would Mark's best man look apologetic when looking at me? The bride's entrance was everything you'd expect. Sarah looked stunning. Her dress was a work of art, and the way Mark's face lit up when he saw her walking down that aisle was probably the most genuine emotion I'd seen from him all day. Whatever else was going on, whatever weird undercurrents I was sensing, Mark did love Sarah. That much was real. The ceremony itself was traditional formal, the kind of wedding my grandmother would have approved of with all the right words in all the right places. I found myself only half listening to the vows, too distracted by the way Anna kept shifting beside me, the way she'd tense up every time Mark's voice echoed through the chapel. About halfway through during the exchange of rings, Anna's entire body went rigid. I followed her gaze and saw her staring at something near the altar. It took me a moment to figure out what had caught her attention. The wedding planner, a slim woman in a black suit, was standing off to the side with a clipboard. Nothing unusual there. But she was looking directly at me, and when she realized I'd noticed, she quickly looked away and whispered something to one of the caterers. That's when Anna grabbed my arm. Her grip was so tight it actually hurt her fingernails digging into my jacket sleeve. I looked down at her, and the expression on her face made my blood run cold. Pure terror. Not anxiety, not worry, but actual fear. "Anna, what?" She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "We have to go," she whispered. "Right now." What? We can't just leave in the middle of... David. Her voice was urgent, desperate. Trust me. We have to go now. I looked around the chapel. Everyone else seemed perfectly normal, focused on Mark and Sarah as they promised to love each other through sickness and health. No one was paying attention to us. No one except that wedding planner who was now speaking quietly into what looked like a small radio. A radio. At a wedding. Anna was already standing, gathering her purse with shaking hands. She'd managed to keep that polite smile on her face, but her eyes were wild. I'm sorry, she whispered to the couple sitting behind us. Bathroom emergency. It was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that gets you out of situations without causing a scene. I had no choice but to follow her, mumbling my own apologies, as we squeezed past the other guests in our row. By the time we reached the back of the chapel, Anna was practically running. She pushed through the heavy wooden doors and didn't stop until we were on the hotel's back porch, a quiet space overlooking the parking lot and a small garden. The cool evening air hit my face and I realized I'd been sweating. The chapel had felt hot, stuffy, like there wasn't enough oxygen to go around. Anna, you have to tell me what's going on. She was pacing now, her heels clicking against the stone porch. Her carefully styled hair was coming loose and she kept running her hands through it like she was trying to hold herself together. The wedding planner, she said. Did you see the way she was looking at you? She glanced over. Yeah, so what? David, that woman has been watching you since we got here. Not the wedding, not the bride and groom. You. And when I saw her talking into that radio... She trailed off, staring out at the parking lot like she was expecting something terrible to emerge from between the cars. Radio. It wasn't a wedding coordinator thing. It was military grade. I've seen them before when my dad was in the service. That was tactical equipment. Anna's father had been career Army 25 years before retiring to a quiet life of fishing and complaining about the government. If she said that radio wasn't standard wedding gear, I believed her. But why would there be military equipment at Mark's wedding? Anna stopped pacing and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Like she was looking at someone she loved who was about to walk off a cliff. Because, she said quietly, I don't think this is just Mark's wedding. I think it's a trap. The word hung in the air between us like a physical thing. Trap. Such a simple word, but it changed everything. The perfect venue, the strange looks, Jake's apologetic expression, the wedding planner with military-grade communications equipment. A trap for who? Anna's answer came out as barely more than a whisper. For you. We sat in my car in the hotel parking lot, engine running, interior lights, casting everything in this eerie yellow glow. Anna had her phone out, fingers flying across the screen like her life depended on it. Maybe it did. Talk to me, I said. What exactly did you see in there? Anna didn't look up from her phone. Before the ceremony started, when you were greeting people, I saw Mark pull the wedding planner aside. They went into this little alcove near the kitchen, and I could see them through the service window. Okay, so grooms talk to wedding planners all the time. Not like this. She finally looked at me, her face pale in the dashboard light. David, he was giving her instructions, specific instructions, about you. My mouth went dry. What kind of instructions? Anna held up her phone. I managed to get close enough to hear part of their conversation, and I saw her showing him something on her phone, a text message. She turned the screen toward me, and I could see she'd taken a screenshot. The text was partially visible, encrypted looking, but there were words I could make out. Target confirmed, dinner service, table 7, contamination protocol. Anna, what the hell is this? I think, she said slowly. Mark arranged for something to be put in your food. Tonight. At the reception. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at that phone screen, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to find some innocent explanation for terms like contamination protocol. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Mark wouldn't... He's my brother. Is he... Anna's voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. When was the last time he acted like your brother? Really acted like it? I wanted to argue, to defend Mark, to come up with a dozen reasons why Anna had to be wrong. But sitting there in that car, thinking about the way Mark had looked at me during the ceremony, the way Jake had seemed uncomfortable, the military-grade radio equipment I couldn't. But why? I asked. Even if you're right, even if Mark has completely lost his mind, why would he want to hurt me? Anna was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the hotel. The reception was probably starting right about now. People would be looking for us, wondering where the brother of the groom had gone. Do you remember that night senior year when you got into state with the scholarship? Of course. You told me Mark said something to you about proving you weren't perfect. The memory came flooding back. Mark standing in our childhood bedroom, face red with anger and humiliation, spitting out words I'd tried to forget. Someday, I'm going to prove you're not perfect. He was 18, Anna. Kids say stupid things when they're hurt. Some kids do, but Mark holds grudges. He always has. Remember the Henderson gnome story you told me? You took the fall for him and he let you. A good brother would have confessed, would have shared the punishment. But Mark let you take it all. She was right, and I hated that she was right. I think he's been angry about Dad's attention your whole life, Anna continued. The way Dad praised you for being responsible, for getting good grades, for planning ahead. I think Mark has spent 15 years watching you succeed while he felt like he was always coming in second. But he's done well for himself. He's got a good job, he's getting married to a woman he loves. It doesn't matter. Anna's voice was firm. It was never about objective success. It was about being Dad's favorite. And in Mark's mind, you've always been that. My phone buzzed. A text from Ella. Where are you guys? People are asking. Anna saw it too. We need to call Ella, she said. She might have heard something else. I hit Ella's number and she picked up on the first ring. David, thank God. Where are you? We're in the parking lot. Ella, I need you to tell me exactly what you heard when you were near the gift table. There was a pause and I could hear reception music and laughter in the background. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, Ella said, but I overheard Jake talking to someone on the phone. He was really upset, saying something about how this had gone too far, how Mark was making a mistake. What else? He said something about the caterers being given special instructions for your table. And David, he mentioned something about a test, like they were testing something on you. Anna and I looked at each other. Her face had gone completely white. Ella, I need you to get out of there. Right now, make an excuse and leave. What? Just trust me. Leave the reception, go home, and don't tell anyone where you're going. David, you're scaring me. Good. Be scared. It might keep you safe. I hung up and turned to Anna. She was staring at her phone again, at that screenshot of the encrypted message. There's something else, she said quietly. I didn't want to tell you before because I wasn't sure. But I've been researching Mark's job for the past few weeks. His job. He works in pharmaceutical research. He works for a company that develops chemical compounds for the military. Specifically compounds that can be delivered through food or drink. The pieces were clicking into place now, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Mark's resentment, his access to dangerous substances, the wedding planner with military equipment, the careful instructions about my dinner. He's going to poison me, I said. It wasn't a question. Anna nodded. I think he's been planning this for months, maybe years. The perfect crime. His brother dies at his wedding, probably from what looks like a heart attack or allergic reaction. No one would ever suspect him. He'd be the grieving groom who lost his brother on what should have been the happiest day of his life. But the wedding planner, the equipment, I think Mark hired professionals. People who could make it look natural, who could handle the logistics. This isn't some spur-of-the-moment thing, David. This is elaborate. This is planned. I sat there in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. My brother, the person I'd shared a room with for 18 years, the person I'd defended and protected and loved, despite everything, had been planning to murder me. We have to call the police, I said. With what proof? A partial screenshot of a text message. An overheard phone conversation. They'll think we're crazy. She was right. We had suspicious circumstances, but nothing concrete enough to get the police involved before it was too late. So, what do we do? Anna looked at me with that same expression she'd had on the porch, like she was looking at someone she loved who was about to make a terrible decision. We go back in there, she said, and we get the proof we need. As Anna scrolled through her phone, searching for more evidence, my mind kept drifting back to moments I'd buried years ago. Moments that suddenly made terrible sense. I was 8 years old, standing in our kitchen with a report card full of A's. Dad had picked me up and spun me around, telling me how proud he was, how I was going to do great things someday. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, his own report card face down next to his untouched homework. Mostly B's and C's, nothing to be ashamed of, but nothing that would earn him a victory spin from Dad. Mark's report card is good too, I'd said, trying to include him in the celebration. Dad had glanced over. "Oh right, good job, Mark." But he'd already put me down, already moved on to asking about my science project. I remembered the look on Mark's face that day. Not angry, exactly. Just empty. Like something inside him had shut down. There were dozens of moments like that. Dad praising my acceptance into the National Honor Society while Mark sat quietly in the corner. Dad bragging to the neighbors about my scholarship while Mark's college plans were barely mentioned. Dad asking for my advice on investments and home repairs while treating Mark like he was still a kid who couldn't be trusted with important decisions. I'd always told myself Dad didn't mean to play favorites. But sitting in that car, I realized that didn't matter. What mattered was how it felt to Mark. What mattered was that my little brother had spent his entire childhood watching me get the attention he desperately wanted. "David," Anna's voice pulled me back to the present. "Look at this." She held up her phone, showing me a screenshot of what looked like a medical form. "I found this in the hotel's catering system. They have a note about special dietary considerations for table 7. That's our table." I leaned closer to read the screen. "Severe shellfish allergy requires EpiPen emergency protocol in place." "David, you're not allergic to shellfish. I know that. You know that. But if someone wanted to make it look like I died from anaphylactic shock, they'd need to introduce shellfish protein into your system and make sure no one could get to you with an EpiPen in time." My phone rang. Ella again. "I'm in my car," she said without preamble. "But David, I managed to get a photo of something before I left." "What?" The wedding planner was showing Jake a tablet with what looked like a seating chart. But it wasn't a normal seating chart. It had medical information, timing notes, and something that looked like an escape route. Anna grabbed the phone from me. "Ella, can you send us the photo?" "Already did? Check your messages." Anna's phone buzzed, and she opened the image. Even in the dim light of the car, I could see what Ella had captured. It was a detailed floor plan of the reception hall with our table marked in red. There were arrows indicating entry and exit points, timing notations, and what looked like a medical emergency protocol. "This is a blueprint for murder," Anna whispered. I stared at that image, and something inside me broke. Not just my heart, but something deeper. The fundamental belief that family meant safety, that blood meant loyalty, that the person who'd shared my childhood would never truly want to hurt me. "I keep thinking about Christmas morning when we were kids," I said. Mark would always wake up first, and instead of running downstairs to see his presents, he'd wake me up. He'd say, "Christmas wasn't Christmas unless we experienced it together." Anna reached over and took my hand. I remember him teaching me to drive. Dad was always too busy, too impatient. But Mark spent hours with me in empty parking lots, letting me practice parallel parking until I got it right. He never once made me feel stupid for being nervous. David. He was my best man at our wedding, Anna. He gave this speech about how proud he was to be my brother, how he'd always have my back no matter what. I still have the video. He seemed so genuine, so happy for us. "People change," Anna said quietly. Or maybe they just get better at hiding who they really are. But this level of planning, this level of hatred, how do you carry that around for years and not let it show? Anna was quiet for a moment, still studying the photos on her phone. I think it did show, she said finally. I think we just didn't want to see it. The canceled dinners, the missed holidays, the way he'd always find excuses not to spend time with us. I think Mark's been pulling away for years, and we convinced ourselves it was just him being busy. She was right. Over the past few years, Mark had become increasingly distant. I'd attributed it to adult life career pressures, relationship demands, but maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe he'd been planning this for longer than I wanted to admit. There's something else, Anna said, showing me another screenshot. I found Mark's LinkedIn profile. He's not just working in pharmaceutical research. He's a lead developer for a company that creates undetectable toxins for government agencies. The pieces were falling into place now, creating a picture that was both crystal clear and absolutely devastating. Mark had the knowledge, the access, and the motivation to kill me. He'd planned it meticulously, choosing his own wedding as the perfect cover. Who would suspect a grieving groom of murdering his own brother? I need to call him, I said. What, David? No. I need to hear him say it. I need to give him a chance to explain, to tell me I'm wrong. And if you're not wrong, if you call him and he realizes we know, then at least I'll know for sure. At least I'll know that the brother I loved never really existed. Anna stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her weighing the risks, trying to calculate whether my need for closure was worth the potential danger. If you're going to call him, she said finally, we do it on speaker and we record everything. I nodded, pulling up Mark's number on my phone. My thumb hovered over the call button for what felt like forever. Once I made this call, once I heard whatever Mark had to say, there would be no going back. No more pretending that my brother was just misguided. No more hoping that Anna had misunderstood what she'd seen. Before you do this, Anna said, I want you to know something. Whatever happens, whatever we find out, you are not responsible for Mark's choices. You were a good brother. You loved him the best way you knew how. None of this is your fault. I looked at her, this woman who'd been trying to protect me all day, who'd risked looking crazy and paranoid to keep me safe. She'd known something was wrong before I'd even admitted it to myself. Thank you, I said, for seeing what I couldn't see, for trusting your instincts, even when I didn't want to listen. That's what marriage is, she said, protecting each other from the things we can't protect ourselves from. I pressed the call button, and we waited as the phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then Mark's voice filled the car, casual and warm, the same voice that had comforted me through nightmares and celebrated my victories. Hey, big brother, shouldn't you be at my reception right now? The phone call had lasted less than 5 minutes, but it changed everything. Mark's voice when I'd asked him directly, Did you plan to poison me tonight? The long pause. Then his laugh, bitter and cold, nothing like the brother I remembered. You always were too smart for your own good, David. That was his confession, not the words themselves, but the tone, the resignation of someone who'd been caught mixed with something that sounded almost like relief. Now Anne and I were walking back through the hotel lobby, past the same marble floors and crystal chandeliers that had seemed so elegant a few hours ago. Everything looked different now. The opulent decorations felt like a stage set, beautiful, but fake, hiding something rotten underneath. The reception was in full swing. Through the ballroom doors, I could see people dancing, laughing, celebrating. Sarah was in the center of it all, radiant in her wedding dress, completely unaware that her new husband had just confessed to planning a murder. Are you ready for this? Anna asked as we approached the ballroom. I wasn't. I don't think anyone could be ready for confronting their brother about attempted murder. But ready or not, it had to happen. We slipped through the crowd, nodding politely at relatives and family friends who asked where we'd been. Just getting some air, Anna said with that same polite smile she'd been wearing all day. Amazing how well she could lie when our lives depended on it. I spotted Mark near the head table, talking to someone I didn't recognize. He was still in full groom mode, all smiles and handshakes playing the part of the happy husband. But when he saw me approaching, something shifted in his expression. The mask slipped just enough for me to see the person underneath. "Mark," I said, keeping my voice level. "Can we talk privately?" He glanced around the room, probably calculating his options. Running wasn't really feasible at his own wedding reception, and making a scene would only draw more attention. "Of course," he said, that charming smile back in place. "Let's step outside." We walked out to the same porch where Anna and I had fled earlier. The evening air was cooler now, and the parking lot was mostly empty except for a few guests who'd stepped out to smoke or make phone calls. "So," Mark said, leaning against the porch railing like we were just having a casual conversation. "I'm guessing you figured it out." "Why?" I asked. It was the only question that mattered now. Mark was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the parking lot. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Younger, somehow, like he was that 18-year-old kid again, standing in our bedroom after the college acceptance fight. "Do you remember what Dad said at my high school graduation?" I didn't, but Mark clearly did. He said, "Well, at least one of my sons made it through." Like it was some kind of miracle that I'd managed to graduate. Like he was surprised I hadn't dropped out or gotten arrested or completely failed at life. "Mark, Dad was proud of you too. He just showed it differently." "No." Mark's voice was sharp now. "Dad was proud of you. I was just the other kid he had to deal with. The disappointment. The one who'd never measure up to perfect David." "That's not true, isn't it?" Mark turned to face me and I could see tears in his eyes. "When was the last time Dad called me for advice? When was the last time he bragged about me to his friends? When was the last time he looked at me the way he looked at you?" I wanted to argue, to defend Dad, to insist that Mark was wrong. But standing there, seeing the pain in his face, I realized he wasn't entirely wrong. Dad had played favorites, even if he hadn't meant to, and Mark had been carrying that hurt for decades. "So you decided to kill me?" "I decided to level the playing field." Mark's voice was getting stronger now, more confident. "You always got everything easy. Good grade scholarships, Dad's approval, the perfect wife. Everything just fell into your lap while I had to fight for scraps." "Mark, I worked for everything I have. I studied. I saved money. I made sacrifices. And I didn't," Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I've been working my ass off for 15 years, trying to build a career, trying to make something of myself. But no matter what I accomplished, it was never enough. Dad would still ask about you first. He'd still light up when your name came up in conversation." I felt like I was looking at a stranger. This bitter, resentful person wasn't the brother I'd grown up with. Or maybe he was, and I'd just never seen it before. "So tonight," Mark continued, "I wanted you gone. For good. I wanted to know what it felt like to be the only son, the one who got all the attention, all the sympathy. I wanted Dad to grieve for me, the way he'd grieve for you. And Sarah, your wife. You were going to let her think her wedding day was the day her brother-in-law died." For the first time, Mark looked uncertain. "Sarah doesn't know anything about this. She's innocent." "Innocent, Mark? You were planning to traumatize her for life. You were going to turn what should be the happiest day of her life into something she'd never be able to think about without remembering my death." That seemed to hit him. His shoulders sagged and he looked away. "I didn't think about that," he said quietly. "You didn't think about a lot of things." Anna's voice made us both turn. She'd been standing in the doorway listening, but now she stepped onto the porch with her phone in her hand. "Anna," Mark said, and for the first time tonight, he sounded like the brother I remembered. Uncertain, a little scared. "How long have you been there?" "Long enough," she said. "Long enough to record everything you just said." Mark's face went white. "You recorded me. I called Ella 20 minutes ago." Anna continued, her voice steady and calm. "She's still in the hotel. She went back inside and managed to get your wedding planner to admit everything. The whole plan, the fake allergy information, the timing of the poison. Ella recorded that conversation too. Anna, please. It's over, Mark. Anna's voice was firm but not unkind. We have enough evidence to put you away for attempted murder. The question now is what happens next. Mark stared at her, then at me, then back at her. I could see him processing this new reality, the understanding that his perfect plan had fallen apart. And then to my complete shock, he started to cry. Not the angry tears of frustration, but deep wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere he'd kept locked away for years. He sank onto one of the porch chairs, buried his face in his hands, and cried like a child. I'm sorry, he said between sobs. God, David, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I thought this was the answer. I stood there watching my brother fall apart, and I felt empty. Not angry, not sad, just hollow. Like all the love I'd carried for him had been scooped out and replaced with nothing. We're going to press charges, I said. Mark nodded without looking up. I know. And you're going to get help. Real help. Therapy, medication, whatever it takes. I know. And you're going to tell Sarah everything. Tonight, before this goes any further. I can't, Mark whispered. She'll leave me. She should leave you, Anna said. You were planning to murder her brother-in-law at her wedding reception. She has a right to know who she married. Mark was quiet for a long time, still crying, still holding his head in his hands. I never wanted to be this person, he finally said. I never wanted to hate you, but I couldn't stop. Every time I saw you, every time Dad mentioned you, it just got worse. And I couldn't make it stop. That's not an excuse for planning murder, Mark. I know it's not. He looked up at me, his face streaked with tears. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at this man who had shared my childhood, who'd taught me to ride a bike and covered for me when I broke Mom's vase, who'd also spent months planning to kill me on his wedding day. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday, but not today, and not anytime soon. Mark nodded like he'd expected that answer. I'm going to call the police now, I said. You can either wait here for them or you can go inside and tell Sarah what you've done. But either way, this ends tonight. Mark stood up slowly, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. I'll tell her, he said. She deserves to know. As he walked back toward the ballroom, Anna took my hand. Are you okay? She asked. No, I said. But I will be. Through the ballroom windows, I could see Mark approaching Sarah. Even from here, I could tell the moment he started talking, the moment her face changed from happiness to confusion to horror. The celebration was about to become something else entirely. But for the first time all day, I felt like I could breathe again. 3 months later, I'm standing in my kitchen on a Saturday morning, making pancakes from scratch. The morning light is streaming through our windows the same way it did on the day of Mark's wedding. But everything feels different now. Lighter somehow, like a weight I didn't even know I was carrying has been lifted. Anna is sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee, reading something on her tablet. She looks up and smiles at me, and I'm struck by how peaceful she looks. The tension that had been living in her shoulders for weeks before the wedding is completely gone. How many pancakes do you think Ella can eat? I ask, flipping another one onto the growing stack. With the way she's been stress eating since her breakup, better make a double batch. Ella is coming over for breakfast, the way she has most Saturday mornings since that night at the hotel. It started as a way for all of us to decompress, to process what had happened. But somewhere along the way, it became just what we do. A new tradition born out of trauma, but sustained by something much better. The doorbell rings, and Anna gets up to let Ella in. I can hear them talking in the hallway, that easy conversation of two people who've been through something intense together and come out stronger on the other side. Something smells incredible, Ella says as they walk into the kitchen. She gives me a hug, the kind of hug that says, I'm glad you're alive without having to say the words. Just pancakes, I say, but I'm smiling. There's something wonderful about making breakfast for people you love, about creating something warm and nourishing and safe. As we sit around the table sharing food and coffee and comfortable silence, I find myself thinking about family, about what it really means. Growing up, I thought family was simple. It was the people you shared blood with, the people who were supposed to love you no matter what, the people who would always have your back. I thought family was automatic, guaranteed, something you didn't have to earn or maintain. Mark taught me that wasn't true. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty. Sharing a childhood doesn't mean sharing values. Growing up in the same house doesn't mean you'll grow into the same kind of person. It hurts knowing that. It hurts to understand that the brother I loved, the person I would have trusted with my life, was planning to take that life away. It hurts to know that all those years of trying to include him, trying to bridge the gap between us, were wasted on someone who saw my love as competition. But sitting here with Anna and Ella, watching them debate whether we should add chocolate chips to the next batch of pancakes, I realized something important. Family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who shows up for you. It's about who sees danger coming and pulls you out of the way. It's about who records phone conversations and gathers evidence and risks looking crazy to keep you safe. Anna saw what I couldn't see. She trusted her instincts when I wanted to trust my history. She protected me from someone I couldn't protect myself from. That's family. Ella left her own safety behind to gather the evidence we needed. She could have walked away, could have decided it wasn't her problem, could have avoided getting involved in something dangerous and complicated. Instead, she stayed. She helped. She became part of our team when we needed her most. That's family too. Have you heard anything? Ella asks quietly. She doesn't have to specify what she's asking about. We all know. Mark's lawyer called last week, I say. He's pleading guilty to attempted murder. He'll probably get 5 to 7 years with mandatory therapy. And Sarah, divorce papers were filed 2 weeks after the wedding. She's staying with her sister in Colorado. I don't blame Sarah for any of this. She was as much a victim as I was, maybe more. Her wedding day, what should have been the beginning of her happily ever after, became the day she discovered she'd married someone capable of planning murder. I can't imagine carrying that kind of betrayal. Do you think you'll ever talk to him again? Anna asks. After he gets out, it's a question I've been asking myself for months. The therapist I've been seeing says there's no right answer, that forgiveness is a process, not a destination, that I don't owe Mark anything, but I also don't have to carry anger forever if I don't want to. I don't know, I say honestly. Maybe, but not anytime soon, and never the way we used to. The Mark I grew up with, the brother I loved, that person might never have existed. Or maybe he did exist, but he got lost somewhere along the way, buried under years of resentment and jealousy and pain. Either way, the relationship we had is gone. If we ever have a relationship again, it will have to be something completely new. That's okay, Ella says. You don't have to decide that now. You don't have to decide that ever if you don't want to. That's the thing about real family, the family you choose. They don't pressure you to forgive people who hurt you. They don't tell you that blood is thicker than water, or that you have to give people second chances they haven't earned. They just support your decisions and help you heal in whatever way feels right. After breakfast, Anna and I walk Ella to her car. It's one of those perfect autumn mornings, cool and crisp, with leaves starting to change color. The kind of morning that makes you grateful to be alive. Same time next week, Ella asks, getting into her car. Wouldn't miss it, Anna says. As we wave goodbye and walk back into the house, Anna takes my hand. Any regrets? She asks. I think about it. Do I regret pressing charges? Do I regret not trying harder to help Mark when we were kids? Do I regret the years I spent trying to maintain a relationship with someone who was planning to kill me? No, I say. No regrets, because here's what I've learned. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can't love someone into being a better person. You can't fix a relationship when the other person sees your existence as the problem. But you can choose who you let into your life. You can choose who you trust with your safety and your secrets and your Saturday morning pancakes. You can choose to build a family based on love and loyalty and mutual respect, rather than just accepting the family you were born into. Blood doesn't guarantee loyalty, but love does. Real love, the kind that shows up when you need it most, the kind that protects you from dangers you don't even see coming, the kind that records phone conversations and makes pancakes and sits with you in comfortable silence. That's the family that matters. That's the family that lasts. And as Anna and I settle back into our kitchen, planning what to make for lunch, discussing whether we need to go grocery shopping, having all those wonderfully ordinary conversations that make up a life, I realize something. I'm exactly where I belong. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. But real family shows up when it matters most. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below. If stories like this hit close to home, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I share real stories about family betrayal and finding your way back to trust. Thanks for listening, and remember, you deserve people in your life who choose to love you every single day.